Ever get that feeling that, like, history is talking to us, sending us clues?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about making those connections, right?
Exactly. And today, we're following one of those threads, a single date, and seeing where it leads us, September 20th.
Fascinating. So what treasures are we digging up on this deep dive?
Well, we got a request, actually, to see what kind of stories we could unearth, specifically from September 20th, across, well, pretty much all of history. And let me tell you, some of this stuff totally blew my mind. Ready to get started?
I am always ready to get historical. Let's do it.
All right, first stop on our trip through time, 1519, the Age of Exploration. We're talking about a guy named Ferdinand Magellan. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Magellan, setting sail from Spain, September 20th, 1519. This wasn't just about finding a faster way to get spices, though. It was a challenge to how people saw the world literally.
Wait, really? I always just thought of him as the sailing around the world guy. What else was going on?
Back then, plenty folks still thought the world was flat. Sailing off into the horizon, you might fall off the edge, that was the fear.
Wow, can you imagine? I mean, I get nervous if my GPS is acting up. Those sailors were something else.
Right, talk about brave. But that's why Magellan's voyage, it was a huge deal. 3 years later, one ship, a handful of exhausted sailors, they come back. Proof positive. The Earth, it's a sphere.
Changed everything, I bet. No more falling off the map.
Way bigger than that. It was like suddenly Europe had a shortcut to the east. Trade routes exploded, for better or worse. Globalism got kickstarted. Colonialism, too, unfortunately. Magellan, on that one, September 20th, he set a LOT in motion.
Talk about a ripple effect. Okay, ready for our next stop. This time we're jumping ahead to the 19th century, September 20th, 1870. Italy's having a moment.
Yes, 1870 in Italy. Picture this Rome, the Papal States, ruled by the Pope himself, right in the heart of the peninsula.
See, now this is where I need some help. The Pope actually ruling a country? I never quite grasped that.
For centuries, that's how it was. But the 19th century, all about unification, right? Italy wanted to be one country. But the Papal States, they were a major roadblock.
So what changed on that September 20th?
Italian troops, they breached the walls of Rome. End of papal rule, beginning of a new era for Italy. No more divided states. Rome becomes the capital of a unified nation.
Another power shift, just like with Magellan? It's fascinating how these things happen. But this time, it stayed local. No global empires this time. Okay, last stop on our September 20th tour, and it's a quick jump to 1973. This one might be a bit more familiar, right?
Oh, 1973. The Battle of the Sexes, I'd wager. Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs. That was a September 20th for the history books, that's for sure.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I definitely remember hearing about this. Even as a kid, you couldn't escape it. But I wasn't old enough to really get what all the fuss was about.
Oh, it was huge. Think about it. This wasn't just tennis. It was a whole cultural moment. Riggs, he was the embodiment of, well, let's call it what it was, old school sexism. He honestly thought and said any woman, he could beat them on the court. No problem.
And Billie Jean King, she was having none of that, right?
Not even a little bit. She was at the top of her game, and she was a powerful voice for women's rights already. So when she took him on, it was about way more than just a match, you see.
And she destroyed him, right? I vaguely remember that part.
Absolutely demolished him. And that was the point. It wasn't just about skill, it was symbolic. It threw those old stereotypes right back in their face. After that, things had to change. Women in sports, women in general, it chipped away at those prejudices that had been around for way too long.
You know, it's easy to forget just how recent that was. Makes you realize, yeah, we've come a long way, but the fight's not over. Wow, who would have thought that just looking at September 20th throughout history would bring up so much?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? History, it's not just names and dates in a textbook. It's alive, interconnected, all these echoes and ripples. What will they say about our September 20th years from now? That's what I wonder.
Now, that's something to ponder, isn't it? Really makes you think. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up. Thanks for joining me on this whirlwind tour.
The pleasure was all mine.
And for everyone listening, thanks for diving into history with us. Until next time, keep exploring.